everybody, welcome back. We're doing episode 25. We're doing a special writing exercise today that we talked about last time that is involving writing through having a conversation with your friends. This is a pretty experimental idea, and we're going to try it live on the show, so we have no idea how that's going to go. We'll see what happens. But first, we're going to stick with our regular stuff of what we've done since last time. Anything that we've learned, anything that we've created, anything we've tried to create. The cool is debatable. I am proud that I put the balls out to do it, though. Man, I feel really good about it. Like, honestly, I want to talk a little bit about how important it is to really master the small pot thing. And small pot means not small. It means accepting things being flawed and incomplete. This came out a lot better than I was even hoping for my first time. So to fill in the audience, to prepare for my trip to Finland, I made my first vlog episode this weekend. And the idea was I wanted to get over the hump of talking in public. And, talking in public is awkward enough. I used to play guitar on the street, and that took a little while to get used to. But the idea of talking in public while staring at a camera, looking at yourself, feels so awkward and so narcissistic that I'm like, this is going to be hard. Let's get that beginner first rep in while I'm on my home turf, and I have all the advantages to make it easier. And then I'll be a little bit ready for when I'm in foreign land.
I feel like you'll have to let me know if this is true or not, but I feel like if you're out somewhere more exotic like Finland and they hear you talking with an American accent and you see your phone, they're going to be like, oh yeah, it's a tourist. Who cares?
But it is a little bit of like a skeleton key.
You sound like you're in your own home talking on the phone. People are like, what is that guy doing?
If you're already unusual, then being more unusual kind of just is a rounding error. When I lived in Japan, it was such a great experience for learning who I was. Like, if you ever have to go abroad first time, don't go someplace that speaks English. Preferably, don't even go to a Latin language speaking country, because there's just no expectation of what's normal for you. So you felt like, oh, I can try everything. Like,
oh, interesting.
Turns out I really like dance.
Very interesting. I never would have considered that.
So in this case, you get the European American card where everybody expects you to be loud and obnoxious. Like, well, if I'm already getting the punishment for it, who cares? Let's do it.
Okay,
so I want to talk about this a little bit. There's a couple steps that went into it. First of all, there was some preparation I did for being able to do the vlog first. I have for a year known that it'd be really important to sit down and practice writing one idea multiple times at different lengths. And there's always been something else busy. Basically, I finally got my Airbnb preparations done, so I have time to dedicate other things. And man, things are moving forward so fast now. Doing that, holy crap, it was even more helpful than I thought it was. I think that should be a regular thing that people do at least once a week. When I start doing my improv things, in professional speaking, it's a lot easier to tell when I'm getting into the weeds, and maybe it does connect to the point I'm making, but it's just too much detail and it's going to bore the audience. Because writing that in a longer form, I feel like, yes, technically all this stuff connects and is much better writing than I used to do, but this is just so long. It's getting wordy. There's an hour long where it matters, and then there's an hour long where we would have got the important stuff in 20 minutes. I don't know how to give any rules for that or how to learn those rules, but just by doing this practice, I started getting a feel for it. And that helped with a ton of other things where writing multiple scripts at the same time now. And I would notice before, I'd feel like, oh crap, I'm talking about the same point here. That's wrong. It shouldn't do any duplication. But now I just feel comfortable we're touching on it for 30 seconds. In that other video, we're going to go into it for 5 minutes. These are completely different uses of it, and this is good,
And it gives you a chance to do a callback, so that way you can connect the two videos, have people go through and watch both of them.
Yeah, like, man, Ryan, there's so many things that I thought were bad that I needed to avoid that it turned out are massive benefits for it. But you can't really know that until you do the experience and feel it and go like, okay, there's definitely a way I could have done this wrong, but since I've done this, I can feel the difference of right and wrong, and we're going to use it the right way.
I remember, I think it might have been the last episode, might have been two ago, where we dived into one of my scripts. And one of the points you brought up was how I took us off on a sidetrack with Shackleton and then just said, but that's a different story. And how you thought that was just great that you can just flat out say, yep, that's something else. We're not going to touch on it. We're going back to the main point. Is that something that you've thought about bringing in to those connections, those overlaps here?
Well, that's a really good point. That is something that would naturally fit and work. And that's actually the main thing we get into. There's like so many parts of the vlog experience to get into, but the main thing was, good Lord, this is the best way to start learning. I wish I could go back in time and tell myself to do it. I'm going to just yell at you nonstop, Ryan, that you need to start doing this as soon as possible, because it's the fastest way to learn anything possible. Because it just neatly, anything can fit in it. There's such interchangeable parts. A lot of the writing that I would try to do, there's certain hurdles you need to get over before it works enough, and you struggle and you don't quite able to pull that off, so you don't write the thing, which means you don't get that experience of making that complete small pot. For this, I didn't understand it. No one explained that to me, but it turns out that vlogging is extremely interchangeable parts. It's like playing with Legos. There's the whole thing where, especially if you do the style where you show a lot of B-roll, because, we're trying to show a site. For my video, I was talking about Nashville, the city I live in and love. It's kind of just expected after you talk for maybe 30 seconds, you should cut away to like some thing that you're pointing at, that you're looking at, so people don't get bored of just being talked to our time. And the whole point was to see things. Otherwise, you could just make a talking head video at your desk at home. But what I realized is that naturally just works as like a freaking magician in the, magician doing tricks. And be like, okay, look at the rabbit. Look at the rabbit. Like, isn't there a cool Ferrari? Like, okay, so the lizard's doing this. I'm like, what the heck? Like, we were talking about rabbits and there's a lizard there now. Because you cut away to something else, when you come back to it, no one cares. You could be connecting to the same thing you were doing before. You could be off on a completely new tangent, and it just feels normal. So if you're trying to like, we're not going to say abstract. Me, I am not experienced with this. I'm new and I'm struggling at this. It made it so much easier while I'm taking this one point that doesn't quite fit as well with the others. I'm struggling. Okay, the first point was, a paragraph long. This is only one sentence, and that feels unbalanced or whatever. And I would struggle of how to fix the writing. Do I need to change this? For vlogging, it didn't matter. Like, okay, the next thing's going to be 1 point long. No big deal. The last beat was really, really detailed, and this one's more just emotion. Like, that's fine. We don't need to worry about it. I feel like this is like a good training wheels where you can get that out. And I learned so much from the experience that anyone else said you would learn so much from the experience that next time, like, okay, well, it would be nice if the second segment was longer. It'd be nice if things were made more relevant to the user. It'd be nice. They're all nices that you can add on to, instead of it would be mandatory to have that before I could put this out in the world.
Absolutely. I will say the one thing that I want to challenge you to do next time is I could very clearly tell two shots that were absolutely planned. And that was the one of you had the camera set up and you went and sat down on the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ending where you walked up and put your hand on the globe.
Yeah.
And those were great. But it was very, very different from every other shot in there, because they were ones where you set down the camera.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. You don't need to be in frame talking every single time. Even if you have a recording of you talking one time, it's okay to cut out the audio from that and put that over B-roll of you just walking by the camera.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, that I haven't published that one yet. I want to edit that. So 2 parts. One, I think it would be really nice to have some action shots where instead of B-roll, me talking, there's actually some like video of me or the person doing something. And I was trying to figure out how to set that up would be good. And I'd love to hear more thoughts on you, like what would be good for that. But at the same time, you're right. I want to slide the B-roll over the talking head stuff. So I could take this 5-minute video and probably cut it down to 3 minutes. And you have plenty of times when there's B-roll and speaking at the same time. I just need to get on the plane and have more time to do those edits. This was like a rough draft.
Still, I'd love to see some of that, even just B-roll, to where it feels natural and it doesn't feel like clear divide between the planned shots and the ones where it was just, oh, this is a nice open spot, I'm going to start talking.
So tell me more about how you think that would work out and what sort of things that would be good action B-roll.
I mean, the easiest thing that comes to mind for me is almost making it feel like you have more than one camera. And the simplest trick to do that is walk along one way, holding your phone like this, talking into it, and then set your phone down this way and just do the same shot of you walking along a brick wall or whatever. So it feels connected and you cut back and forth. So it feels like there's 2 cameras, even though there's only one.
And this use the audio track from the first clip through the whole thing? Yeah, it could work.
You can even film it so it's walking with you showing your back, so that way they don't see that you're not talking anymore. Help try and keep that immersion, but make it feel like it's multiple cameras, not just one camera and, okay, I set it down here and I picked it up and I'm walking with it.
See, this is what I'm talking about. I think this is such a great format to start getting into. I was talking about how it's easy to get started, so you start getting those reps and start learning faster. You are explaining so many good ideas of how to improve it. Like, there's a lot of ceiling on this, where I truly believe even if vlogging isn't where you want to end up, I think you're going to master so many good, strong skills. Like, it sounds like a trivial format, but the skills that you could walk away from with would be massive. So when you go into your more serious format, you're already like, bam, okay, the first thing's going to be pretty difficult, require a level of experience. I know how to do this, I can do this, good ideas.
Speaking of getting some practical experience, I'm going to a whiskey tasting event tomorrow night. So I'm going to be bringing a few of these little Bluetooth mics. And I'm going to try and get some practical experience.
Nice. In the field. Any thoughts on what you're going to do?
Thoughts on what I'm going to do?
Yes.
At the very least, I'm going to try and get some beautiful B-roll. That way, if the atmosphere of the tasting, if it's like a very intimate, just 5 of us, I don't need to pull out my phone and start recording and make it a little, I don't know, that just doesn't seem right for me. It feels like I'd be lessening the other people's experience. But then at the same time, if there's 75 people in this room and it's loud and obnoxious, I've still got that B-roll. Either way, I can go home, record my own thoughts from a script, and just put that over the B-roll. But if the atmosphere is right for it, absolutely, I'm going to try and record and make it more of a vlog style.
Like, I'm looking forward so much to seeing this. I'm glad we did the breakdown of the Ardbeg distillery. So much of that conversation with you helped me plan my vlog when I did it. And I hope that it came across, but the establishing shot, mid shot, close-up shot, doing that pattern each time, I think it felt nicer, but it made the editing so much easier because I had a clear direction to follow. I'm wondering, do you have any ideas like that for what you're going to do? The more I planned ahead, I spent like 2 hours doing pre-production before I went out into town because I was like, I'm nervous. The more I feel comfortable with having an idea of what I'm going to do, I'm not being nervous about 2 things at once. But I found out that really is a useful step. And, have you done any thinking on that for this one?
So I have been to this distillery 2 or 3 times now. And it's a beautiful distillery. I absolutely have a few shots I'm planning on trying to get, depending on, again, how busy it is, what the atmosphere is like. And it also did rain here today, so I'm hoping there's going to be a good puddle or something, but if not, I've got a water bottle in my car.
I want to hear more about the shot list. Like, what shots have you considered that you might do? Like, that's something I want to learn from.
So I know they have a gorgeous outdoor patio, and if it's not raining again tomorrow, I'd love to try and recreate that shot of the water on the barrel and the reflection of the distillery in that. I'd love to try and recreate that one. And actually, if and when you come up to Minnesota, I'm taking you to this distillery. They're O'Shaughnessy Distilling. They make Keeper's Heart whiskey, but it's a blend of Irish whiskey and American bourbon or rye. Is very interesting, but they also paid to get the old master distiller for Jameson over.
Oh, that's some good credibility right there.
Yeah, that type of money going into it too. It is just gorgeous. I mean, outstanding atmosphere everywhere. So I know I won't have to go far to get good B-roll.
Nice. Yeah,
I'm really
really
have a fire pit or two. So I'm thinking the ending establishment shot of having me just resting by the fire with the distillery in the background.
The ending shot's another important one to pick, So resting, that gives like a conclusion kind of feel to it. Yeah.
Drink in my hand, natural cheers.
What are you going to use to hold the camera while you're in the frame?
So I can kind of cheat a little bit because I have a nice phone case that has a little stand built into it. So it's not perfect. It sits at an angle, but I mean, I can get it pretty close, especially if I put like a little rock under it, or even since I've got two of these Bluetooth microphones, I can stick one under it. Not the best thing for the mic, but for one shot, it wouldn't hurt it too much.
Yeah, like I've been getting a ton of mileage out of just having a freaking thing to like hold the camera. And, some of the shots are decent, but the more thing I come back to is like, it's easier to get more shots in more situations instead of thinking like, oh, I guess I wish I had my camera and my tripod. So I'm learning so much faster this way, this kind of stuff, it's been a really good way to get started. I'm so excited about it.
I'm looking forward to the event, and even if I can't get all the shots I want because it's busy tomorrow night, I can go back the next day and go there when they're first opening, have a drink, and take some video then.
I find the mental drill is the most powerful part. Like, even if you couldn't do it, the fact that you were thinking ahead of time, you're already learning from that. And then when you get there and you look around, you're going to be, okay, I should be exactly here. Or you're like, oh, in real life, that shot wouldn't work. Now, why did I think it was going to work when it wouldn't? And then you get better at visualizing things ahead of time. I would classify that as a small pot. You thought of an idea and saw it through to the end. Even if it didn't get published, you had that complete loop of your mind.
It's great just to practice that process.
I actually want to say I love your Bluetooth microphones. I tried them out and I got like some fancy ones, and I got those. That was also really good advice of get ones you're not going to be so stressed out about damaging or losing. These are like travel microphones. But comparing the two, the expensive one versus the travel one, it was so much easier to use. The Rode one, you actually have this knob, and then you have to connect it with a cable, and then you have to find some way to hold the two. The Bluetooth one that you recommended, it just plugs directly into the bottom. Yeah.
iPhone, Android, or even a headphone socket. Makes it too simple. And
it's
it was
physically attached.
All of $20, so if I drop one or break it, not as big of a deal. I don't need to cut my hand up trying to save a $200 drone from going into the lake.
The sound quality made a significant difference. I didn't use it this time because I'm trying to like force myself to take only one step so I make more things. But I could tell massively the difference between the sound of holding my phone out this far versus if I had it up here. And in the future, I'm going to use that. I'm packing that. I'm taking it with my trip. I think that's going to be a huge help on the effortlessness and actually just getting good sound. No matter what's going on, you don't have to think about that.
I also love that it comes with two and you can connect both of them. I haven't done anything with that, but man, that is such a convenient thing. And I haven't looked it up, but I have heard other people say, and I don't know if it's this one or if it was one just similar and this is a knockoff of it, but they said if you got another set, you can technically pair more than two TUT. They just only gave you two hardware.
That could be useful.
We'll see.
One step at a time, just getting myself out doing I think it's going to be a big leap forward for me. But interviewing people, it's hard. I mean, we've seen that doing it ourselves, but it's really like valuable. It's super huge. That's where the gold is.
Or if when we're back in town together, we can both record something like us going out to a distillery or us walking on the train tracks.
Yeah, I like that. That'd be fun, like be in motion, be in public, doing stuff. Yeah, this is a great idea.
Who knows? Maybe someday we'll do a meet and greet.
Even better. And then you're going to need those extra microphones so we can have hand off to other people. I think it's going to come. I really like what we're doing here. So moving on, before getting to the main thing, one last writing point. I did the exercise with writing the same thing, short, medium, long, and just figuring out where it fit. I would love to talk more about that, but in the interest of time, I did another thing as well. That was thinking about what are the different genres of writing. And I know it's kind of revolting to put art into a box and this kind of stuff. But if you understand all of the formats, all of the colors, all of the rules, then you can more easily know how to break them. So even if you don't intend on following them, it literally helps you break the rules if you just know where they are, But it helped eliminate a lot of problems and overthinking I had. Because when you're getting advice on writing, almost everybody makes the assumption that their style of writing is the only thing that exists. They'll just say writing when they actually mean fictional writing, a novel, which is one of maybe 10 different things you could be doing. And what would happen is I would feel like maybe last year, I'm not a good writer, but I can make stuff and I can make videos if I needed to. But after all the advice, it actually got harder to write. And I realized because that is all the advice I've been getting, I recognize it's brilliant and I try to use it. It's not meant for the thing I'm trying to do. It's actually making it harder to do the thing I have to do. And I couldn't understand that. I thought the problem was me. It finally dawned on me, oh God, this is a different format that's not fitting. And that brought up two immediate questions. What are the different types of formats that you could do, different genres of writing? I actually don't know the answer to that question. And then the second question, well, what format am I trying to do? Damn, I don't know the answer to that question either. And no matter how much of a rule-breaking, Jack Kerouac you want to be, you're at least going to need to know number two. What is it that you want to do? And having alternatives to compare against, it's not like you see these and go, oh, I guess I'm going to fit into that hole. You're probably going to look at, I'm going to mix of pink, yellow, and neon. You're going to combine a couple of these. Or you just look at them all I hate all of these. And I hate those three the most. And you're going to do the opposite of that. Really just reacting to something, whether you like it or you want to avoid it. It gave me so much clarity. It was really huge. I want us to dive more deeply into that in a future episode of what we came up with. I put together a spreadsheet. I just off the head, I think there is a spectrum of how much information you need to convey versus how much emotion and persuasion you need to have. And I think there's a different mix of those for many, many different genres. And I made a list of those that I think exist and how much of each of those attributes I think each of them have. I sent that list off to a bunch of people and asking them their thoughts, and nobody gave me any input on it. So we'll try it like maybe next month.
I did look at the list, and to be honest, I was a little intimidated because, God, you've put more thought into this than I ever have. And my normal strategy for figuring out what sort of story I'm writing is, well, how would this story normally be told if I was watching it on TV? So for like Shackleton, all right, where would I see this story? History Channel, National Geographic. All right, let's make it more documentary. For John Shaw, episode 2, well, that's a cowboy. Let's do spaghetti western, Clint Eastwood. Let's rip off of those. So I've just been trying to figure out, okay, what lens would this make sense? What are they doing? Let's make it that style.
So once again, you're already just a natural at this. 2 steps ahead.
The problem is, I never gave it as much thought as you to classify or create a list or anything like this. So it's one of those, wow, this is going to be an amazing resource once it's done. I don't know how much help I'm going to be.
Like always, just our reactions educate us a whole lot. So let's do a future episode and we'll just discuss it. And whether you like, whatever opinions or reactions you have is definitely going to give me a lot of info. For me, since I didn't have that kind of like, well, I know what like a show on that channel is going to be like. I couldn't just conjure that in my head. I went through and I just watched a bunch of videos of like, well, I like this one. Well, I like these 3 and I can tell they're different. Like, what is each of them doing? And as an overthinker who's been flooded with a lot of information that turns out to half work and half not work, I had to do this. I had to untangle all of that stuff when for other people might not be necessary. Also, a lot of the stuff you're writing is closer to a
it's
narrative,
it is
literary story. And a lot of things I'm trying to do, like there's no emotional change, there's no characters. So it's like, man, what do we do here? All the advice is telling me to do, like, I have to have a character and I'm emotional, and like I don't think I can. How do I? And I've seen other genres that I put in my list of like, okay, for this one, we'll just get an example so we can move on. If you were doing a tutorial, the expectation is your audience 100% is invested in getting this shit done. You don't need to persuade them. That's a beautiful thing to talk about how important it is to persuade people, and you need to have this emotional connection. You don't need that at all. People already showed up into it. You can make this enjoyable, interesting, and you can add a lot of positive emotions to it, but you don't need to be taking them from one emotion and then strong-arming them into this dramatic twist into a new emotion. That's completely something you don't need to do. There's a lot of things you have to do where you're going to be really heavy. This needs to be accurate. It needs to have step-by-step that people can follow. Your script is going to be really important. The steps are going to be really important. And then a layer of making it enjoyable is a bonus. Like if you end up making your video and it's completely dry, instruction manual, it's not going to be a very popular video, but it will be a video that works. It will be a stepping stone that you can move on to the next one. It'll be a small pot that you can like, this was done. It's a complete plot. I can learn from the experience. I can, be happy with this like practice.
The one thing I would add to that is I think it varies also by how much of a niche you need to find for it. So if you're being absolutely dry, most boring, here's how to change an air filter on a 2001 Dyson vacuum cleaner. Well, if you're the only person who's made that video because you're going so in-depth of it's this specific vacuum cleaner, you can be as dry as you want. It doesn't matter. You don't need to compete. But the minute you start limiting how narrow you're going into that niche, you start widening your field out to more and more people and more competition. You need to try and make it more and more enjoyable.
Yeah. I think you'd be like a minimum threshold of if anyone would watch it. But there is like definitely a very floor of like, you could be proud of it. That's something that you could use as your first step. And I think everything will benefit from more sugar if you can add it to it. But that's going to be a judgment call of, like you're saying, like, is it the right 80-20 to add more sugar to this genre? Is it going to, or should I just spend that extra effort in making 3 of these?
To be honest, one of the big examples that comes to my mind was when I had my first car in high school. It was an Oldsmobile Alero, and
Mm-hmm.
I had to do a ton of work on that car over the years. Like I changed out brake pads, I had it on up on jacks, I think every other day for almost a month at one point. And it was a great car, but I didn't know how to do a lot of that stuff, and I'd talk to like my grandfathers and try and get their advice. And is this something you think I can handle, or no, I shouldn't try and change the alternator myself right now. And when it was a job that they thought, yeah, you'd be able to handle that, they'd try and walk me through it over like text or phone, and it wouldn't really work. So I'd go to YouTube, and there was this one guy who also had an Oldsmobile Alero, same make and model, and it was okay. He is extremely dry. There's nothing fun about this, but this is necessary. I need to be here, and he's just giving it to me straight. That's all I want right now. I don't want someone who's making jokes and taking up more time. Just show me how to fix this damn thing.
Yep. And that's the final thing I would wrap up on. This had a surprise reverse benefit where now that I can see that you have a different mix of information versus entertainment, and it's going to be a different continuum, I look for that in what I'm watching, and I realize I should be doing a better job of critically choosing what I watch. Because, like, we've been at this for a while. At the very beginning, it made sense that I needed a lot of sugar and entertainment to keep me interested, to keep me focused. I'm really tired. Everything's really hard and frustrating. But now it's a point where more often than not, I will watch a YouTube video that comes up in my feed on a topic I care about, and I get 3 minutes into it. I'm like, yeah, I know. You're not telling me anything new. And what I need to be doing in my stage now is being more aware of that value versus entertainment thing, and be more like frugal of looking for, I want less entertainment. I need something that's more like hardcore knowledge in order to, one, give me stuff that I don't already know, but two, I'm ready for it. I want to have a lot of learning very fast. If this means that this is going to be boring, but I'm going to learn twice as much in that 15-minute video, that's what I want to be signing up for now. You know, that might not be the right choice for everybody every time, but that's what I need now. And I wouldn't have even been looking for that if I hadn't done this exercise. And now I'm starting to get more of like more effective learning from this process.
It's a very interesting breakdown, and I'm so happy you are making this list, because again, it's going to be such a beneficial tool to everyone once we have it done. But my goodness, I've never thought of undertaking this.
It was not that hard once I got going on it. Like, I wish I'd started a long time ago. Jumping off of that, like, feedback, that itself, man, we need to get better at. We are doing okay with that, but man, people got to be better at that. Like, so many people I showed this to, and I got like these infuriating answers, like, you're just overthinking it. Don't overthink. I'm like, what the fuck have you written? Nothing. So, like, how the fuck do you know? Like, people basically giving the artistic and business equivalent of just be yourself. Like, fuck off. We need to learn skills and get better. I'm not looking to be average. I'm not looking to just do what I've always been doing. I'm looking to learn. This is something we care about. We're passionate about. We're trying to do a good job to make something really great for other people to enjoy. So just like, don't overthink it. Just do what comes natural. Fuck that shit.
I think this comes back to something you've hit on a time or two, which is a lot of these professionals who play it off like it's being natural and this is just like a hobby I picked up randomly one day. They've got a background in doing this sort of thing, and they're already technically professionals at it by the time they pick it up as a hobby.
No, you're like 100% right. And that was like the realization. The people who said don't overthink it, not one of them was the published author. Every single time when it would like shock me and offend me, and then I'd go back like, man, what am I doing wrong? I do overthink a lot, and I'd actually wait a second, who told me that? And like asked like, what have they done? Every time the answer was nothing. There would be this feeling that they were talking with such conviction that they must know what they're doing. It's somebody who's really passionate about this stuff. So I assume, like you and I, you put your passion where your feet is and went out and did something. And I realized, no, they have not done anything. They haven't written anything. And, I can't measure it, but all the signs point to they don't have any skill. They haven't built any skill. They haven't done any training. And it's absurd that people who haven't done any action to learn anything and haven't created anything would say advice with such conviction and derision when they have no reason to think that they know what they're doing.
So I think this is, again, boiling back to they haven't seen behind the curtain. They don't know how hard it is to make good content. They see people making it look easy, so they think, oh, it must be that easy. I should be able to make it that easy. When I can't, it makes me mad and I don't end up making anything. My grandfather has, at least he told me this once, he probably doesn't even remember telling me this, but it's stuck in my head and I'll never forget it. It's not good enough to be good at something. You need to be so good that you make it look easy.
Yeah. And I don't know if that applies more to anything more than on like this kind of video stuff. Because the stuff, when it's done really well, it becomes invisible. It hits a really emotional impact, but you don't notice it because you're so focused on the emotions that you're getting.
It's like seeing someone who's naturally a good speaker. You go, oh, I should be able to give that same speech. Why don't people listen to me the same? Well, you haven't put in the time and effort practicing, figuring out how to get that emotion, figuring out I need to slightly change my tone at this part. I need to pick up the pace at this part. He has all these experiences and all this practice that he's playing off of that you never saw any of the behind the scenes. You just saw what made it look easy.
So bringing this to the tangible lesson, I think there's a skill of receiving feedback that will be easier when you're aware of this phenomenon that we just described. In hindsight, when I see it in the future, it'll be really easy to immediately just hear that this is a sound of somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about and they're just trying to act like they know what they're saying. And when someone actually does know, they can be a lot more thoughtful and having more nuance, like, well, it's a little mix of this and that kind of stuff. And related to that, I keep coming back to like the whole small pot thing is the most important thing to keep focusing on. And there is a form of small pot feedback. And I think it'd be great if we learned personally how to do a better job of giving it. And at the same time, I think you could do a better job of receiving feedback that wasn't designed for that and interpreting it a little more easily for yourself. Some feedback I got, it's a standard thing where I made this and I'm just excited that I had the guts to do it. I'm really happy it got complete and I'm going to learn so much from it. Any amount that is actually good is like pure extra bonus that doesn't even need to be there. And all the feedback is, of course, of like, oh, well, you need to do this next and this next and this next. And, like, honestly, you can't put something out unless it's been completely designed to be relevant to the audience. Like, I'm just trying to learn from this experience. I'm not trying to make a masterpiece. And you're giving me advice on how to make a masterpiece. I'm trying to learn how to make a small pot. And I think there could be ways that we could phrase our feedback more easily of like, next time you could do this, or, when you're looking to convert to monetization, you could do this. But for now, like, okay, what could help you learn the most from next time? Like, okay, next time, if you do this, you could have done the same process in half the time. So you get the same amount of learning, but for like faster, those kind of things. I want to start thinking about what that would be. What would that mean? And what can I start giving that to other people?
So maybe just even asking when you first send it out to them, hey, what's one tangible thing that I could do to improve upon this the next time I make something in this vein?
I think the focus has to be on, I'm looking for feedback to learn from the next experience, not to make it better for the audience.
I like that. I like that a lot.
And me, myself, I can do a better job of knowing when I'm hearing people say these things. I'm like, wait, that's not even what I'm trying to do. Like, this was so many stretch goals that miraculously came through. Like, what are we even talking about that for? This, like, oh, these are the advice for 6 months from now when we're trying to monetize it. And that's really great. And we're going to pull it back in the bucket. It's kind of the same thing as with the writing advice I had, where it wasn't right for me what I was doing, but it was brilliant advice. Like, I'm glad I've recorded all that. So when I do that genre, I have that advantage already.
I definitely like that, and I think you're on a great track. I'm trying to figure out how we could communicate that a little easier, and maybe starting off by explaining, hey, here's this project I worked on. I'm really happy with the fact that I've learned this, this, and this from it.
Mm.
Do you have any feedback on how I could help learn more things the next time?
Yeah, I like that. Let's put this into practice. We learn so much more from actually the experience. Let's try doing this with stuff in the future and see what we learn out of this.
Looking forward to it already.
Right. Let's move on to the weird writing experience. So the one book I was reading, I love the advice that you can do your first draft of your script that you're trying to write actually through your conversations that you have with your friends. This is great for a lot of reasons. The primary one is the more smaller steps you break something up into, like stairs going up, the smaller those stairs are, the faster you can do them, the more you actually pay attention to each level you went, and you learn so much more from it. It was a great help for me to go from, instead of trying to start by writing sentences, to just start by writing outlines. And this is one step before that, just having a conversation about it. It's also something you can do on the fly all the time. So that gives you more opportunities to do it. Now, the first part of it is how this works is, obviously you're going to need to have friends who are interested in the things that you're interested in. This is supposed to be like an intentional conversation. You're not walking with like a notepad, but you're going to go like, okay, so, I've been really thinking about, the whole effect of, nuclear power on, modern food choices. And if that's what you want to write your video about, you're going to go and talk to them about your friends. If your friends aren't going to be interested in listening to you talk about that, that's your first problem. Like every part of this work, it's drawing more appropriate people into your life. We kind of start off with just generic friends, and as part of the reward of doing this, and also part of the work of doing it, you need to be making friends who actually care about the things you're interested in. So step one, if you don't have people that you could talk to about the topic that you really want to write about, go online, find some people on Facebook, Reddit, Meetup or whatever. I know we have a lot of things going on, but this is going to pay off so much. At least get one friend that you could have a conversation about this stuff with.
So I would maybe change that a little bit and say you don't want someone who's so invested in the one topic already. You want someone who's interested in something that's very tangent to it, to where they're interested because it kind of applies to what they like, but you still need work to keep their attention. Whereas you have a friend who's absolutely in love with Irish whiskey, you're not going to need to try and get them to focus on you. They're already going to be like, oh, yeah, I love the story of Redbreast. I know that one already. They're jumping ahead. They're not actually listening to you. You need someone who goes, oh, yeah, I enjoy whiskey. Oh, you're pulling out a bottle. You're going to tell me the story of it. That's cool. Normally, I just drink Jim Beam.
It's a good point. You could also have situations where you want to have a complete everyman, because maybe it depends on the audience that you're going to write for. If you're doing something, this is going to be presented to everyone in the world, and I need to figure out how to make people who never heard of it understand it. So I guess, the only requirement would really be have someone who's willing to listen to it. And if you don't have people who, if you go off on your thing that's really important to you and no one wants to listen to it and they just want to go talking about generic topics, you're going to need to find people who are interested in, hey, it's not my thing, but I like that you're enthusiastic. Yeah, we'll talk about that for the next half hour.
I'd almost say this ties into what we were talking about earlier of entertainment versus information. Find out, okay, if I'm going after a style where it's very much information focused, they're there because they want to be. I don't need a friend who, I want someone who is already very invested in this. But if it's something where, okay, I want to apply to everyone, then I need someone who is going to need more entertainment to keep attention and try and play it off what you think that audience and that style of story needs.
Really good point. Okay, so yeah, first of all, like think about what type of thing you're trying to write, and depending on that, you might have more or less leeway of how many people you can choose from to talk about this stuff with. Step one, still figuring out somebody or a group of people that will be a good audience for you to chat about this, where it's going to be conversation that they're going to engage in. Next part is, why does this work and why is this a good way to go? So first of all, you're going to get a lot of immediate drafts. When you're writing on paper or like typing out, even if you just do bullet points, it's kind of down. And then you look at it like, okay, I'll move here or here or here. You don't hear it enough, but when we're having a conversation, you have so many false starts or changing the sentence when you're in the middle of it or restarting. They happen so often, we just ignore it and we go with it. It's perfectly fine. But that actually means when you try to do this by conversation, you get dozens of drafts of that idea in a single conversation. It's really fast. It speeds up your initial process. And when you're first chiseling just a rough outline of the statue from the marble, rough and fast is what you're going for. You also get immediate feedback because, you write your outline, maybe you think what you're thinking about it, and then maybe next week you actually show it to somebody and then you get an idea of this. When you're doing a conversation, you see their body language, facial expression, and anything they say immediately. And this is a skill that as you get better on, you can actually be adjusting what you're doing on the fly. So maybe like the first sentence you were going this way and like, oh, that doesn't seem to work. Second sentence, we're going this way. I'm actually re-saying the second sentence a different way because you can repeat sentences because we can do that verbally. And, before you even get done with your first paragraph, you might have altered it so much based on the feedback you got. That could be, like months of writing, practice, skill development, and refining just from a single, 60-second talk with a friend.
The other real fun thing about just bringing up to a friend is I like to do it after I give them a drink or two and have other people in the room who are not in this conversation. Because if they start suddenly getting more attention focused on someone else's conversation rather than the story, okay, yeah, you're not actually listening and you're not just being polite now. Because I know, hopefully, you have good friends who would be polite and listen to you. But when there's another distraction and they've got a drink or two in them, their head will physically turn and you go, okay, this is where I need to do better. This needs another hook to grab their attention and keep it on.
Exactly. You get more honest feedback because it's not just them saying it. You can watch their body language and see like, okay, they're my friends, they're being nice, but I can tell like they're not having a good time. Actually, I did this when I was working on the advertisement for that whiskey program I was putting together. My first draft, I read it to a friend. And at the end, like, she's like, yeah, okay, I suggest this and this, but, she was positive about it and never said anything about it being too long. Like, I could feel when you checked out at minute 6. And I know that even if you are too kind to tell me, it was so helpful to do that.
Just because they're saying nice things, absolutely watch that body language. And
you got to be trained in that skill. That's
a lot harder to hide.
Reading people, listening to your audience in more than just what they say. And you can do this over and over with different groups of people, or maybe like bring it up again another time and refine it. I'm really humming how on having multiple versions of completed works is a huge thing. I think we keep on talking about you should make your first draft, your second draft, and then your 10th draft is perfect and gets published. And that's the last time you ever touch it. And your next works has to be completely different. But so many of the greats we've seen, like they publish on paper with a publisher's name on it, and then 3 years later, basically write another story that's identical, only better. You know, getting this stuff out into the world to a finished state and then iterating on that finished state a year or two later, I think that's where the real magic starts to come in.
You want to know something really funny to me?
Hmm.
The first edition of the first ever book of Harry Potter, the way you can tell that's a very first edition and not like a second edition or secondary printing is there's like 3 glaringly wrong like misprints in it. Like there's the title is spelt wrong on the back cover, or there's 2 words repeated in the description on the first page or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is a full novel that became world famous,
Yep.
went through an editor, everything, got published, sold how many copies, and the first time it came out, it had all of these mistakes in it, and that's the only way to recognize that was the first one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why do we think that our work is going to be any different?
Yep. Like the greats, that's how they got there. Getting comfortable with not just making your pots small, but releasing them even with flaws. I think that seems to be the main skill that allows the greats to create greatness. Well, let's give this a try. So we'll do that for about 20 minutes. I have a topic that I've been thinking about, and I'm gonna try to put away with my notes, because in reality, you're just having a conversation with friends. It might be something you thought of. You might have got in the car thinking, okay, today I want to bring this up, and I want to try to work out how to connect these things together. But once you get going, you got your stuff, and that's it. So let me look at what I want to talk about, and we'll give it a try. Yes. Okay. So the next topic that I actually want to write a video about is about writing through friction. And it's funny because creating through friction is actually what we've been doing with this podcast the whole time that I didn't really give credit for. It's hard to do this. It takes effort. It takes less effort now because we've gotten better. But at the beginning, it was we're breaking stuff left and right with a lot of struggle. But this was the first time that we really were actually I'm going to make this even though it's going to be messy and hard and stressful. And how much have we learned from this? And there's so many other times in my experiences that I don't do this that I know I need to start doing. The best example I think of is years ago when I moved to Japan. I was so fired up about this. This is this hugely important experience. I want to journal about it. I want to blog about it, write about it, because there's so many benefits from it. But as soon as I get there, guess what? It's this massively awesome, exciting experience. I'm overwhelmed by how many things I need to do. It's a growing experience because it's difficult. Just figuring out how to get cash to buy the ticket to get to the work was a massively difficult experience. I didn't have extra time to sit down and start documenting what was happening. And so I'm running into that. There's 2 different places. One, the time that it's most difficult to do it is the time you most need to do it. So when you start figuring out how to do that, you've probably had this experience too, where something really big happened. It was the most difficult time for you to be recorded at all.
Yeah. There's a few times where, God, I wish I could have recorded that. It would have been great, but man, I just didn't have the free hands. I didn't have the attention span to give to it, but it would have been such a good lesson on camera.
Do you have any thoughts of something that would have helped, or making the task smaller, or having certain skills beforehand, or just changing mindset? Is there anything that could have done it?
Honestly, I think the one thing that would have helped was just hand someone my phone and say, "Can you record this for a second for me?"
Huh.
Because a lot of it was when I was at the bar and I'd be telling a story while making a drink or doing something, and it feels better to me if I'm actually behind the bar making a drink, and man, this would be great content to me. Making a Manhattan while telling someone, "Oh yeah, this is why it's named a Manhattan." 212, 2 parts whiskey, 1 part sweet vermouth, 2 dashes of bitters. That's the area code of Manhattan. If I had that story along with me making a cocktail in a bar for someone and just handing it to them, and if I had just said, hey, you mind recording this? This is going to make a great video. It would have been so good, but I never once thought to do that.
Interesting idea. So there's two parts of that. There's one, having somebody help by being the audience with the camera. And the other part is you're also putting your situation where it's more natural for you. Like, this isn't just like, well, I guess now I'm at my desk in my apartment that isn't even made out of wood. What is happening here? This is all weird. You're in your natural environment talking that you normally would.
Oh, well, I'll have to get back there someday.
It's something to think about. It's cool. So, like, there's a lot of parts in this, like, why it's hard to do and trying to figure out how to make it easier. I'm thinking that a certain extent of it is also just developing, like, the fortitude to power through and do it anyway. I feel like there's probably like this in all things in life, but especially in this work, doing it while you're uncomfortable is going to be a major switch we have to flip on. So maybe the way to flip that switch on is to think more about why this is really important or why it's really hard, you know? And that's something kind of interesting too. Like, do you think it's more helpful to people, like, to get motivated? Is it more helpful to understand the problem? Like, oh, okay, I can see it. It's not scary. Like, it's not an unknown demon anymore. Or is it more helpful just to, like, feel the pressure of why I absolutely have to do it?
That's one of those things where I think it's going to be different for each person.
Mm-hmm.
One person's going to feel one way, the other person's going to want that fight. They're going to want that. I lost the word for it. They want to overcome that adversity. They want to put up that fight and have that in the video.
Some people want to overcome the problem, and some people want to chase the benefit. So I guess we're getting to probably wise to try both and find which works on you.
Or even what works best in what situation.
That's another good point. It's going to be different situations, even for the same person. So then let's dive into both of those. For why it is a problem, is I'm noticing that there's kind of a minimum threshold of velocity for some creative acts. And that's kind of like the reason why I wanted to talk about this topic. Like, for science and engineering, like, if things are slower, like, you know, we got to do this even when it's difficult. Okay, it's going to go slowly, but we could probably, you know, oil the machinery before we did it. Like, either way, stuff is happening. But with art, it's all about emotions, and emotions act on time. So there's all these, like, thresholds. Like, okay, if you delay something a little bit, like, okay, I'm not going to do it now, I'll do it tomorrow, or maybe even like shorter than that. Okay, if you delay something, like, I have this really cool idea, like, I want to do it in watercolor, and I can do it with watercolor, but I'm really slow at it. And by the time you get halfway through it, your emotion has gone from, I want to paint about peace. I'm like, all I feel is frustration. And that's the only emotion I'm in touch with anymore, not the emotion I actually wanted to create about. So, you know, actually doing it now, like, I get into the other problem, though, of, like, being able to make it easy to do it. Yeah, I guess that didn't connect so well. But
I could see that connecting. I would just say that if you're doing a watercolor painting, what master painter sat down and finished his masterpiece in half an hour? It's okay to put it away, come back to it the next day when you're over your frustration of, man, this is taking me so long. You don't need to get your video written out, recorded, edited, and published all in an hour. It's okay to take a week to get through every step of it.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's a solution you could start building, of having things broken up into small pieces and be like, okay, I wanted to make the video, which has 5 steps to it and 5 different skills you need. Like, I wanted to work on it. And it could be a really technical part that you had to take care of, but you put the emotion into that part and getting along with it. I'll think about that. But I wanted to think about the time on that a little bit, because if you go really long, like if you have a really long delay, you can completely change the environment of what that idea where it's not applicable anymore. Like if you're saying like, I really want to write about, like, you're like, I want to really talk about how important it is for people to stop using, horses every single day. Like, well, that was really relevant 50 years ago. Now it's not even an issue, so there's no point in writing it, Bad example, but you see that there are things where the relevance to it is real time based. And like maybe like on the same thing, if you wait a long time, you might have changed. It could be something where you go back to your notes and like, I wanted to write about, how much it matters to, spend time, on athletics. And then you're like, it's been 2 years and like, I actually don't really care about sports anymore. Like I'm really into finance. So I couldn't even write that story anymore because I don't feel that way. I'm different. So stop having this delay of waiting is really important for that. And also like I'm seeing that there's a lot of inertia with these emotion and ideas where if you put it away for so long, you can come back and like, you know what? This is about sports. I'm still a sports person. In fact, I even care more about sports. But like, it was an idea I had last week. There's this kind of time thing where you have to do it now and follow that momentum. Emotions, they're like waves. You can't just put it in a box and then pick it up later. You have to ride it now when it's moving.
So I would challenge that by saying, if it's something where you know that it's going to change or it's going to wear off, be open to that, recognize it, and either change with the story, have that follow you, or know and recognize that and change the scope of your project to where you can get it done without rushing it in that time frame. So for St. Patrick's Day, if I decided a week before I wanted to make a video, I know it's not going to be a 20-minute video essay on the history of Irish whiskey and St. Patrick's. I knew it's going to be a short form, write out a script, record it maybe 5 times to get myself actually saying it right while looking into the camera and not at my phone, edit it for 20 minutes, and then upload.
That's a great idea. Like that requires a skill of knowing how to estimate how long those steps take. But I think that's pretty doable to learn pretty early on. But that actually sounds like the biggest solution to all of this. Learn how to estimate how long each of these steps take. So you can look at something and go, this is how long I have that I could do it and that I'd still feel this emotion. Scale it down to fit into that box.
It's all about budgeting your time. I have a year to do this and I'm going to, like for my podcast and writing out those episodes, recording them. Yeah, it took me probably about a year to get everything written, recorded, edited, and published. And I could have waited another 6 months. It wouldn't have changed. But at the same time, if I had done it all in a day, it wouldn't be nearly as good.
Well, that's a question of how good you need to make it. So that's the other side of, okay, we have to scale it down small. Like, what do you think about the thoughts of like, no, this is too small and we need to make it bigger. Otherwise, it's not worth doing.
Diminishing returns again. How much time do I have for this? All right, I'll budget around that. What's going to give me the best ROI on this time? How can I make this as good as it can be in this time? I don't have a budget on time. I don't have a deadline. Okay, when is this now going to stop being a worthwhile ROI? That's my new budget. That's what I'm planning around.
And this is where it's getting into being aware of those different cutoffs. Like, how would a delay damage the emotion or the idea or the motivation? And I think if we develop awareness, and yes, I'm overanalyzing and giving us more tables, that will help you like, oh, there's my motivation. Like, I need to do this in 5 days because I know that all these pieces of who I am, I mean, I'm only going to be interested in it for 5 days. So even though I might want to pause everything for 3 weeks to make a masterpiece, it'd be easier for me to be invested in compressing it down to something less glamorous for 5 days because I know that's the amount of time that would the max that I could have to make it matter. It's not like an external constraint. It's an intrinsic constraint, which is easier to accept and be motivated for.
So another example of this would be your Irish whiskey tasting class that you had to rush to put out. If I said, all right, you have 2 years for 2 years from now, St. Patrick's Day, I want it done to a very high degree. I don't think you'd actually take 2 years to get it done.
No.
That being said, I think it would still be ready in that 2-year time. I think you might take a year, practice other things, so that way you can be even better for that deadline.
Yeah, good ideas. Good ideas. One thing that weaves in here somewhere that I care a lot about, and I feel there's a connection, but I'm still trying to spitball how it actually weaves in. There's that idea from Matt Dix, who he talks about homework for life. He is a good storyteller. He's the book that I recommended to you. But he takes talking about storytelling to a value that I never really comprehended before, where he's using it for his own life journaling. You know, the title of Homework for Life is that you're supposed to be writing stories about yourself every day for your whole life. And there's a lot of values for that, improving your writing skills and having things to talk about whenever you're asked for it. Like, you always have a story that's real for every topic that's needed, every emotion that's needed. But the main benefit is doing this. It actually expands, it multiplies how much life you get out of every day. Because the amount of life you get from today is one part the time when you actually lived it, and then the next 50 years of when you remember that day, And most of our life, we just go through and then forget it. The way your brain kind of packs up information, if it wasn't notable, it kind of gets discarded. His explanation is the more of a master storyteller you become, and the more you repeat this progress of, journaling what you're doing, your brain gets better at noticing the notable things in life. There's more going on, and maybe at the time you feel it, but you don't really catalyze it, so your brain doesn't know to remember it. So doing this, you look back okay, I remember last week this happened. I remember 3 weeks ago, a month ago, and it feels like you look back in your life and there's a whole lot of things you experienced. There's a lot of wisdom you have from it, but I also feel man, if I was the dad tomorrow, I was oh no, I never got to get started. I really did a whole lot of shit. This was great. That feeling kind of multiplies by 10 or 100 of how much life you actually got out of the same number of years that you had. That's a pretty cool bonus, right?
Absolutely. And this was something I was accidentally doing when I was bartending in Nashville. Rather than just come home and having Ashlyn ask me how was work, and I'd say, oh, fine, and sit on the couch and watch TV, I'd try and go home and say, oh, it was pretty good. Here's a funny story about what happened at the bar, a funny story from a client. Here's something entertaining that happened. Just having that practice of telling a story was so useful, and it made me more interesting than just, it's fine. I'm going to sit on the couch now and watch Great British Bake Off again.
That's another good motivator for it too, because if you become that way, doing like you were saying, it radiates to the people around them. It probably encouraged her to have more engagement, talk more about her life, and you actually would have more of a real connection instead of just being in the room together.
It's something I need to get back into the practice of doing.
Yeah, I'm trying to do this as well. I have a nice Notion sheet of there's 3 different people who've told me to do this, and here's how each of them describe how to do it. And I'm going to finally get in the habit of doing one of these that works. But that's a pretty big benefit. This ties to the main idea of what I'm talking about is I think a lot of people don't do that because that's another form of you have to write through friction. Like you're living your life. You're tired, you're busy. I suggested this to a friend and he said, "Man, I have so many things that like for productivity I have to do at the end of every day. I don't want to add more work to every day." Like that makes sense. But if we can crack the code of how to write through friction, how to write when you're still learning, you know, basically that unlocks the ability for you to document learning experiences instead of only documenting things after you have learned. And if you really look at it, oh, I like this idea, Ryan. If you look at it, life is all a learning experience. And so if you don't learn to document when things are still being learned, you're not going to be able to document anything of your life.
I completely agree. And how much of a shame would it be if all the experiences and lessons that you learned in your life just leaves the world with you? When you're gone, all of it, everything you learned, has gone to waste.
I feel that it adds some pressure to be like expecting or hoping the value, like it was as hard for me, but then someone else will read it and that'll make it worthwhile. I honestly see so much value in doing this for yourself. Like every time I review my own notes, I learn so much from myself that I think even before like you passed away and someone started looking through your stuff, you would have learned so much from your own like journal and notes and looking back and stuff that the people around you would already be benefiting from the person you became that you wouldn't have become without doing this. Like, how many times do you make the same mistake over and over and go like, why the heck did I not, like, I know this, but we know and we forget. If you were doing this, able to like create content, write during battle conditions, you're like, oh, yeah, I do know this. I'm not doing that again. And in a way, that kind of gives you more of a lifespan because you're still living the same 70 years, but you're getting to move on to the next stage every single time instead of, well, I spent the second 30 years doing the same thing as my first 30 years. Like, nope, this one I'm going up. No, and we're advancing every time. That could be more, you could get deeper into the deep end of the pool than someone else would get if they lived 500 years.
I like that idea a lot. I really like that.
I'm really excited about this idea.
So when are we going to start seeing an Ethan Smith daily vlog?
Daily is a high bar to jump to, but that's exactly why I wanted to bring this up today, because I leave on my trip tomorrow. Oh my God, it's just crazy to think about that. I'm less underprepared than I expected to be, but yeah, I'm going to try and do this. I wanted to like practice this drill because I think it's a really interesting drill to see how well it worked and we could learn from it. But I also wanted to like learn about this topic because, I don't want to just write a video about it while I'm in Finland. I actually want to practice this skill when I'm there. The whole thing is like, there's so much I'm going to be learning. I still have hotels and trains I need to book and I'm getting on my plane tomorrow. I want to master the skill of writing even when things are busy and chaotic and I'm worried about not having enough time, still taking time and making this happen.
Man, I'm excited, and you've got a lot of practical experience headed your way.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be good. This is going to be hard and good. Why do I make my vacations hard work?
Because when you get home, that's when all of it's going to sink in. You're going to say, man, that was so much fun and so worth it. I need to do it again.
Okay, I love this conversation, but I want to do like kind of an analysis of like how our experiment today went. You first.
From this side, honestly, it stopped being a script writing exercise and was more of a fun, almost philosophical conversation with you. And I really enjoyed it.
I feel like that's, yeah, like I'm very glad that like, you really get engaged with stuff and like you have good ideas. I started off kind of doing a monologue. And then the second I like remembered, oh, this is supposed to be a conversation, you got more lit up, and I started getting more really good information then. So that was my first learning experience of how to actually do this as a conversation, not a TED Talk. Now give feedback.
And I mean, again, time and place for each style. It's very, very worthwhile skill to achieve of being able to deliver a soliloquy or stand on a soapbox and speak and have people listen to you without having to give back their response. That is a great skill to have. But it's also a great skill to be able to talk and have a conversation and get that back and forth. It's knowing when to have what skill and what you can get from both of them.
Yep. Like always, you need to master all of them. Take what you have first.
Learn to use every tool in your tool belt.
For this, the learning experience was, I think, important to state your premise pretty thoroughly, but stop and then make it interactive so you can actually have a conversation. Because a lot of like the stuff where like I have 4 points, I want to figure out how to weave them together, and I was like, well, what do you think? And you take it off in a new direction that's not related to any of those 4 points, and it's kind of like, but I'm trying to weave these together and not have that conversation. Every single time you would bring up connective ideas like, oh, this is great stuff. Like this will weave stuff together. Like, I guess it's like the reactions. Either like, yeah, that's really not what I'm trying to do. And it helps me be more certain about what I do want to connect. Or it actually does connect in a way I never expected. And now I have a greater understanding of the whole domain I have to work with. So like, if I want to connect these 3, well, I have more territory I could jump to if I wanted to become those.
I also just tend to view the world as a very strange perspective.
It makes you a really good person for all these conversations where if I already knew it, then I wouldn't need to know it. Like you have ideas that are new and add to what I'm putting together.
Happy to help lend that strange lens anytime I can.
There was also one point where it really was just in the middle of explaining it to you. And I feel like I've gone through this because I've written it multiple times, but somehow having that conversation with you, a new connection came up. I was like, I really like this. This is actually the real core of what I'm doing. And that's really helpful. So I would say I'm sold. I think this technique really works, even for people trying it out for the first time.
I will say I was not expecting you to turn it into a conversation like this. The times where I've done something like this, it's been practicing stories for my podcast or even just telling stories at the bar. And for those, I treat it more like I'm sitting around a campfire with my friends telling a ghost story. And I want you at the edge of your seat the whole time, waiting for what comes next. What's the big reveal?
Yeah.
And how do I capture your attention that way? I've never done this style where it's back and forth like this, and you really have my attention here.
We'll have to experiment with that. Because like you're saying, like different styles, different topics apply differently. This is more an idea. So I think it makes it a little more natural for a conversation back and forth. But we've been surprised by so many things that next time, if you're interested, try taking a story that you're working on and turning it into a little bit of conversation and just see if you get anything out of it.
So this does also connect to an idea I've had for a way of retelling a story I already covered, where I do a Princess Bride style and just have someone there interrupting me, bringing up questions and points the whole time I read out the story.
I want to do that. It's gonna be a great idea. Just full on, like even if there's no questions, it's just like, oh yeah, I like that guy. Fuck that dude. It'll be.
It'd be so good, and I even wrote out an intro to it at one point. I just have not done it with anyone yet.
So I would like you to think about, we don't have to be next episode. We can wait longer whenever you have a fit. But when there is something that you either want to try, like, trying this conversational style, let's switch and we'll do that.
And I kind of really want to try it with what I'm going to be recording tomorrow, but I don't have a script or anything yet because I don't know how it went, what it's going to be like, what my thoughts are on the whiskey. so I can't do that yet.
We're well over an hour for today, so
We are.
we can think about it for 2 weeks from now. I'm going to be in Finland, and we're going to have a lot of unusualness happening for that episode. But, think about it. If you're ready, then we could do it then, or we can put it to the queue for next time. I will say I love the fact that we've grown so much that now we just have this natural queue of ideas coming out that we're excited about. And personally, I am really enjoying and really getting a whole lot of like this writing practice stuff we're doing together. Seriously, that one drill I did by myself, that is what unlocked my ability to like start making videos, which has been the problem that stressed me out the most. Because like, this is what I care about. Shouldn't I have actions proving it? And I'm not making anything. But that was the holdup. Like, the writing is the cornerstone, the foundation for everything. And doing this with you, I feel like I'm improving on the part of this chain that matters the most.
I'm sorry you were so close to name dropping the title of the podcast with foundation of what? Come on.
We named it for a damn good reason.
Ethan, you were so close. One word away from name dropping the show. Come on.
Camera's great. Microphone's great. Writing is the foundation of creation.
We got it. Clip it.
All right, let's do questions and wrap up. I'm going to have to start packing.
All right. Do you want to ask first or should I?
I think it works better if you ask me second so I can close this out.
Sounds good.
My question for you, and I've been thinking like I should have asked this a long time ago because I like this idea a lot. Tell me, is there anything that you've learned from doing this podcast lately?
Lately, I mean, man, I've learned things just from this episode.
Huh.
I swear, every time I come and sit down, record one of these with you, I end up walking away with thoughts and ideas I never had before, thinking about things in new ways. And again, I see things from a very strange perspective typically, but that often means I'm missing a large chunk of things that are obvious for so many other people.
Tell us about some of those.
I mean, even just creating a list of different styles of writing, why have I never thought to do that? Why am I just going in my head trying to keep a Rolodex up here of, oh yeah, Discovery Channel, HGTV, what was I watching that would be similar to this? Why not just write it out and have a list so I'm not trying to remember what a spaghetti western is like? It's such a simple concept, but man, never would have done it. I just wouldn't have.
Yeah, good point. I think that's kind of a good question for us to routinely think about. Like, what have we learned from this? And I'm starting to think that, as I get better at creating through friction, I want to start doing like a weekly like email where I just write up like, here's the stuff I've learned from my conversations with Ryan. It'll reinforce it for me and might help other people, have it in written form.
Yeah, I'd love to help write out a section of that, or even if we take turns writing an email or something, that'd be fantastic for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So my question for you can either answer this about the latest practice vlog that you did, or of one you have thoughts for coming up when you're in Finland.
Mm-hmm.
What art style are you trying to make it? Are you going for Baroque? What art style does your vlogs fall into?
That's a good question. Because it kind of started hitting me. I had so many ideas of what a vlog's supposed to be. And I will flat out say, no one on earth is more shocked that vlog turns out to be the genre that I identify with, that I fit the most. Like, how much, like, revulsion did both of us have for that word when we started this project?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many people doing a vlog and not doing anything with it. It's just them talking into a camera about something boring with monotone voice that
Yeah.
it we were we were ruined on the concept. And
Yeah.
that is a real shame because since then we've both have learned, oh, there's a lot of benefits to this, and when it's done right, it
Mhm.
is so powerful and easy to think that I should be doing this, and why haven't I?
Yeah. And like going back to your question, there's the cutting away from the actual speaking part to just showing something that I do feel just has some sort of artistic feel to it. Um, I was like getting that emotion, like, oh, there's something about this that I kind of like. And when I went to analyze or get prepared to do this vlog, I noticed like that's the thing I like. I don't understand why, but that's something I like. Not everyone does, but that's something that I want to do. And that's, that felt like some period of art. And like I'm going to think about that. Like which genre or which era does it fit into? Because it kind of was like that. Um, I definitely agree that there needs to be more overlap between the B-roll and the speaking, but having some time where maybe it's just 2 seconds, but there's just, yeah, we're taking a little vacation right now. We're just looking at things.
So if I can
hmm.
offer another interesting point on this, just from watching a few examples, I tend to think of a travel vlog like you going to Finland tends to be more of a romantic style of art, where it's showing an idealistic interpretation of it.
Mm.
People aren't showing you the hardships of traveling normally, unless it's showing them like overcoming this great ordeal of, yeah, I went to this country where I don't know any of the language, they don't speak any English. Here's me overcoming this monstrous adversary.
Yeah, it's definitely not a documentary thing. It's not a
No.
science paper. It's supposed to be this like cleaned up. Like a couple of vloggers say, like I flat out, it's not me. It's a fictional character that I'm portraying to be having fictional adventures. Um, I immediately went when you said like what period it was. I just went to what period of music, and music, to my knowledge, doesn't have any scientific documentary version of it. So all of them are emotional artistic versions. And I was just thinking, so is it a baroque type of emotion, or is it a romance period overwhelming period? Is it classic?
I don't think I've seen a baroque vlog where it has that intense light and shadow, and I
Could
don't
be wrong.
know that I've seen one with that much raw and powerful emotion, and I think that's because it'd be such a struggle to get that in someone's
Mm-hmm.
actual life.
Actually, I have a link I got to send you. When I was picking up my camera, the number one review for the camera I have was a guy who just makes these 2-hour films for everything he does, which means that he can only create something every 3 months. He makes 4 videos a year, but they're
Jeez.
all like baroque pieces where it's super dimly lit and it's shadow and light and everything is this kind of like art gallery piece. And the way his script and the way he speaks brings that tone as well. And I'm like, I don't know if I need to know any of this stuff, but I am having a good time. Let's just keep going, man. 2 more hours.
Once you find something that's really in that art style that you enjoy, even if it's in a different media, it just clicks for you and you will sit there and watch so much of it, you'll binge their entire
Yep.
channel.
And that's been the Awakening too. Like you got to get the right tone, and the tone and the personality is what people are going to really just get in the mood for. Like when you really get down to it, like you watch a movie, all the words are only just to create an emotion. All of the videography is only to create emotion, and the only thing you're signing up for is I want to feel this emotion, and then that emotion, and then I want to hit the third emotion. So, I should have like put this in like the whole talking about the vlog thing, but for me personally, even more exciting that style is like actually I can do it. It's easily achievable, and I can start experimenting with things and learn from it. The thing that made me happiest about that is I can actually use all the skills I have. It's been so much of kind of feeling like I took a waste of my time getting that detour in videography, where I'm so into like the script and the writing, and I'm never gonna spend this much time making something look really pretty. And if I do, it's not gonna really matter if like this educational video I make, which has important information, is a little pretty or a lot pretty. But for this vlogging, and the reverse goes too, where there's other things like, well, this is a really visually dependent thing, and I'm not good enough to make it that gorgeous, or I don't have enough money and time to spend on a studio or rent the equipment, because it's not just like you have to have the camera. Like you need to have like a 3,000 square foot of space. So you can have like, you know, a 150-yard zoom in all that kind of stuff. And for this, it's like, okay, you have a level 4 out of 10 writing skill. You can use that and it'll add 4 points of value to your video. You have a 3 out of 10 videography skill. You can use that and it's going to add 3 points of value to the thing. And every skill that I spent the past year developing, every single one of them was able to be used in it to add to it, which is why like when it ended, like I looked at like, I know I'm not that great, but I really feel good about this because it was able to take advantage of every skill I have at whatever level it was. The result was really satisfying, but the feeling that I actually could get benefit out of the things I trained, oh God, that made me so happy.
Love to hear it, man, and you should be very proud that I swear all these classes that you took, they absolutely helped you. It's amazing seeing how much you've grown since the start of this show, but a lot of them, you weren't seeing a change in how good your product was at the end of it. You weren't making something to see how much you had grown. So now that you finally are making a couple things, you're seeing how much of a benefit all these skills are, and it's I wish you got to see them in real time, but I'm glad you're recognizing them now.
I got a place I'm going to use it. Having a starting point is so important, and I finally have mine. So I'm going to keep trying doing this on my trip. I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of disasters and busy things and stuff, but we're gonna make something. You might be getting texts from me going like, "Hey, could you give me a suggestion of how to handle this thing?" And just keep powering through.
Please, always happy to help.
All right, this has been great. Really happy with this episode. Learned a lot. Final question for the audience. I want to know which vlogger you like and what about it do you like?
I love that idea. Need some more.
And if you say me, you don't win any prizes. You have to pick somebody else.
Even better.
All right, 2 more weeks. I'll see you again.
Look forward to seeing you in Finland, my friend.
Yeah. Score! Bye, guys.